Hey everybody, Yvette Kelly Fields, Principal and CEO of Yvette Kelly Fields Associates. My goal is here to help you be better at raising money so that you are not stressed out. And I am learning and talking with a lot of clients. Or just people that call me up like, Yvette, I got an issue, I got a problem. That we really don't understand that a nonprofit is a business. I don't know, and I get why. I get why. Because when business started in this country, I'm talking about America, everybody understood the goal was to make money. Make money to feed your family, make money to provide yourself with housing. The goal was to make money. I sell a service, a product, somebody pays me, or we barter. It was designed for me to take whatever I got to go take care of things for me, my family, and whatever. That's clear. A business is clear. It's very clear. However, nonprofit organizations are not as clear because their origin had a different path. The work that we do in this country to solve social problems when this country was founded was not done the way it's done now. Business is still business. The barrier to entry to have a business has changed, but business is still at its core. The goal is to make money for the person who owns it or for the shareholders. That's what a business is designed to do. That's at its core. There's no question. When it comes to charitable work, it was never designed to make money per se. It was designed to solve a social problem. That's what charitable work is. We exist to deal with a social problem. I see an issue over here. Early America, we see an issue with women who have children and they don't seem to have means to take care of themselves, because we live in a time where if you don't have a husband that's taking care of you as a woman, you don't have much rights. You don't have the ability to get a job, or the only thing you could do is be a maid or a lady of the night. There's just so many limitations. If you don't have somebody looking out for you, you're going to be in trouble. So what was our resolve to try to address that? A person like Jane Addams, who comes from a family with some money, has some friends with some money. I think it would be great if we just bought a house and we start to house these women and their children and help them to figure out how to navigate to the next place, because they don't have a husband, or the husband they have isn't helpful. They don't have any help, support, whatever. That was the whole idea. They pulled all their money together to purchase a property, and then they all worked together to help do stuff, and they got other women to come in and volunteer. If someone looked at what they were doing and thought it was a very noble cause, they said, we'll contribute money to. It was becoming a formal process, but it was informal. You had Harvard University, one of the first universities in America, who were among the first to have actual people that we would call development officers, major gift officers, who are out raising money. And the first thing they raised was not money. It was books for the library. That was the first thing they got. And they got a tiny sum for the work they were doing, and they were working on behalf of a university. Universities were built by the churches. Many of them, which is why so many universities that are around have had religious roots. That's why they exist. The church in early America, it still is, whether we want to believe it or not, was a key player in the economic atmosphere of this country. So the church helped to start hospitals. The church helped to start universities. The church helped to create people like a Jane Addams and others who felt compassion in their heart because of a conviction or a belief, or maybe like Thomas Jefferson, who I believe was not a religious person, but he believed in helping mankind. So he did his own forms of charity. All these people did this out of their pockets. All of them. Everybody started with their own money, never in their mind thinking to themselves, I want to have an executive director, we need a development officer, we need program people. That's not how charitable work started. Unlike a business, like you got to have an owner, you have to have workers, I have to have capital, I need to have the money to make the products, I need to be able to get, that business is very much so still that. It's changed, but at this core, it's still that. Charitable work never started with what it is now. How did we go from a charitable work where it really is free to the user? If I was a woman with a child, That housing was free to me. I wasn't expected to pay no money. I'm not even sure if I was really expected to show up and do any programming. Their goal was like, let's get you off the street. Let's get you housed. We want to take care of these kids, and we'll just figure it out from there. There was no measurables. There's no impact statement reports. There was no what we call logic models, theory of change. None of that stuff existed. This was just good people trying to help people because they saw them in a bad situation, and they were moved by their faith, their sense of humanity. Any number of things is what moved them to use their own money out of their own pockets to take care of things. That's what they did. What it evolved to over time was it went from people just doing it out of their own pocket. We still have people doing that today. There's lots of social organizations that they come together, they raise money out of their own pockets, or they do a raffle or something, and then they use that money to go buy stuff and they give it away. They don't have an executive director. They're not doing no reports. They're just among themselves doing good work and minding their own business. But over time, as charitable work started to be able to attract more dollars and became real clear it was going to be necessary. Like, it wasn't going to just be one house for women. Like, well, we just need to help these 5 women. We'll help them, and society's going to be better. Men are going to be better. They just don't know any better. If we help men to think more about how they treat women, or if we help them have jobs, we're not going to have this problem. That didn't happen. Not only did they have it, it just kept growing. So now you have like the Whole House and other types of programs that grow because the problem exists and the problem is growing. So now it's like, okay, it was one thing when it was just me and the 5 of us, and we coming out of our pocket to buy a house, feed people, clothe the kids. We was able to do that. We got a couple other people give us some money. But now we need to have 5 houses. And I don't have time to be here for 5 houses. I might be a housewife, but I got my own kids. I got other stuff I have to do. I was able to help with 1 house. I can't help with 5. And the problems are more complex. The first time we did it, we had this group of women participating, and now I got this group of women participating, and it's changed the whole dynamic of how this even works. They have more needs. We need to do more with the kids. Now we have to start to have structure. It's not just what we can do. It's not just our money. We need structure. Now we have to have somebody who maintains the houses, because there's 5 of them. We thought this was a temporary thing. This is going to be ongoing. The people who started 10 years in, I'm older, life changed, I can't keep doing it. So people start to look to a model like, well, what do we need to do? Because this is an issue. These are problems. No one's giving money. No one's paying to help have service. If a person needs an apartment, there's leasing agents. But if a person needs a place to stay and they don't have any money, and I see that they need a place to stay, then the onus falls on me because I'm the one who sees the need. I know they have a need. I know they have no ability to get resources. I think I can get resources. So I'm going to use my ability to go get resources to serve their need. That's what I'm going to go do. Okay? That's what I do for this volunteer. So now I'm thinking about what kind of structure can be put in place to help this person who has a need in the way that they're telling me that they need help. Right? That's when you start to say, let me get together a group of people, and you can look at the business model. I'm going to get together a group of people that eventually be called a board. And we're going to talk about how can we help these people. And then we're going to start talking about resources. Well, I know a guy who has a house. Well, I know a guy who has this. Well, I know a lady who could do this. Well, there's a friend of mine that she went to school to be a teacher, but she doesn't want to be a teacher, but I think she'd be great at overseeing one of the houses. That's when you start to have structure. Now we have a group of people coming together to start to think about how do we solve what's becoming a larger issue. Now that we have people coming together to think about how to solve a larger issue, and now we have to start to bring people on board to help address the issue that goes beyond the volunteer. Now it's like, well, Sally, who's a teacher, would love to do it, but she would love to get paid. She doesn't really need much. Well, where are we going to pair it with? Well, I can give some money. How much does she need? Now we start talking about formalized work. Now we're paying people. May not be actually hiring them. We might be giving them a stipend. We might be, give them fruits and vegetables, something as a way to exchange a wage for the work they're doing to help people who don't have the ability to help themselves financially, right? So now we get into staffing, volunteerism. We have a board. Now we have facilities. Now we have somebody who's volunteering to take care of those facilities. Now we have somebody who's coming to help see about the women's needs. Now we have somebody who's coming over here to look after the children. We have a whole growing group of people coming together day after day to deal with a situation that's not getting smaller, it's getting bigger. You fast forward 30 years later, dealing with an issue that has continued to grow because people have not figured out how to have housing when they're in a crisis situation, because that's how life works. It does. Lots of us have had ourselves in situations that a nonprofit helped us get out of. I can say it for sure for me, especially if you're a child and you need help with school and food and housing. It was a nonprofit that came and did it. It wasn't a for-profit, because those things cost money. You don't have money, you're not going to get help from a for-profit. So you have a growing infrastructure. You have a growing need, which requires a growing infrastructure. And while initially it started out with just some people coming together and pulling their money and pulling their time, it has now required effort that goes beyond somebody that makes some time out their day. It's like, we need somebody here every day for 8 hours to deal with this. Well, now most people will say, well, that sounds like a job. That's not volunteer work. And if this is a job, we're going to look to the business sector about, well, how do jobs work? Because jobs are not a part of what we do. We do charitable work. We don't do business work. But you're starting to ask for things that require structure and continuity and somebody being in charge of that every single day. That's no longer volunteerism. That is a job. And now we have to start looking over here at the business model, because jobs don't exist in the charitable world. We're supposed to do this at our leisure. We're supposed to do this in between time, to fill in time. This is just something extra. This is not a daily thing. I don't have an extra 8 hours a day for the next 5 years. I don't. But you can hire somebody, and that's called a job. But what we're doing is charitable work because we don't sell housing. The people we're working with can't afford it. So it's like, okay, we have to find a way to pay for somebody to come and take this job. Well, I'm looking over here at universities that have been doing this work. And then let's look to the church model about how they're funded. Well, the churches take up offerings. The churches get money from individuals. The churches have tithes. The churches have people who do other things. That's a good model. Let's start to adapt to those models that comes over to this work that's charitable. And let's now start saying, okay, let's ask people to give us money to help pay for this. We've been putting in some money anyway. Let's start to see if we can pull enough money together to pay somebody some kind of small wage to be here every day. That's how we start to see charitable work transition to what we would now know to be nonprofit work. Because after a while, when you start hiring people and you're starting to deliver services and you got to house people, and if something happens to the housing, people can sue you, or something happens to somebody's kid, you can get in trouble. You have to start to have formal processes in place. And formal processes cost money. And you have to have a way to get the money because you're not selling a service. So you look to organizations that already exist that have money coming in where they're not selling a service, and that's going to be the church, and that's going to be universities, because they're the first ones in America that's really out doing work that's not charging a service, but they're getting money. And they're actually employing people, and they're actually maintaining buildings. You just copy that model. And then over time, when businesses start to come into places like the Rockefellers, and they're like, I have so much money, I don't know what to do with it, then the idea of foundations come up. Well, here's a tax strategy that we've created for people who are in business. We're going to start a thing called foundations. You could put your money there and, you can give it out to charity, but it also lowers your tax bill. Look at that. Look at how we create a whole charitable thing that sounds good, because we now see that charities need money, but it's also a great tax shelter for the really wealthy people. And Rockefeller gave a lot of money because he had a lot of money, and he put a lot of money in that foundation that he could spend in a lot of different ways. He was able to do a lot of stuff, but that was just the beginning. Foundations started to become a bigger thing. Corporate giving started to become a thing. Individual giving was always there, but now there started to be structure and strategy around how to get individuals to give to certain causes and how to get them to give more, because the cause keeps growing. Over time, we go from an informal, just trying to help somebody out process to a formal, structured, we pay people, we have people that go out and ask for money, because it is now a business. It's just a business that does not distribute the profits to the owner. It distributes the profits back into the work, thus making it a nonprofit business. And we have now created tax structures for nonprofits where they don't have to pay taxes. If they have a 501c3, if you make a contribution, you can get a tax write-off. So it also helps you to lower your taxes. We've done a whole structure just for nonprofits. But because of that, you now should understand why nonprofits are a business and why nonprofits have to now, in today's time, think intentionally about how they make sure revenue comes in the door, just like a business does. Are there still charitable organizations where they don't have a lot of structure, they don't have paid staff? Yes. Yes, there's lots of them. They come together, they put some money together, and they give out scholarship, they buy some food. But here's the biggest difference. Most of those organizations don't have any paid staff, they don't have any structure, they don't have any liabilities. They just collect the money, giving it away, and it's great. That's that's still a charitable organization. Can you be a big, large nonprofit and be a charitable organization? Yes. But when you move over to the business side is when you start to have ongoing expenses and ongoing responsibilities that require somebody to be in charge. And consistently. That's when you're moving more into a nonprofit business, and that's when you have to start to continue to formalize and build structures. And the bigger you get and the more you want to do, the more your structure has to start to become formalized, and it has to start to be one that people are now paying attention to and doing the work to make sure it works out. That's the biggest difference. And before you say, well, what about these organizations that are 501c3? A 501c3 designation that makes you a nonprofit can be different from what it is for a hospital, from what it is for a shelter, from what it is for the Girl Scouts, for what it is for your nonprofit organization. There's all types of different designations under that 501, different types of nonprofit designations. So you have to take time to really start to understand not only the history of charitable giving and the history of charitable work and the history of nonprofits, but you also have to understand what does it mean to operate a nonprofit business, and you need to start to know where does the money come from for a nonprofit business, because we don't sell products to a customer. The customer we serve cannot afford our services. So we have to have dollars come from someone else who can pay on behalf of that person. That is what you have to learn as a nonprofit leader, as a nonprofit board. And if you want to know more, you feel free to reach out to me. All right, that's it for today. Bye.